So we are talking about goal trees today, and you'll see links to the slides and the breakout notes and things like that. And just before we kick off, so building goal trees and executing with impact is what we're discussing today. And as I've gone through, we are recording, and we sort of already talked a little bit about the community, but let's go ahead and get into the topic. So let's go quickly through this because I know that there's so much to go through in terms of just refreshing your memory on what a goal tree is. It's really, and you'll see the visual, it'll make more sense, but it's really about breaking down the goals and assigning them in a visual manner to help identify how all of the goals are related and lead in amongst them all. So we've written out a better definition here, but Carly, do you want to say anything about this before we go to the next slide?
Yeah, I'll say two really quick things. So number one, if you are visual, if you're a visual learner like myself, you will love goal trees. So just wait till we show you the image. This will click a little bit better. And then number two, I would say the way that I like to explain goal trees is everyone here familiar with an org map where you have like the relationships between people, reporting structure? A goal tree is like an org map, but instead of showing the relationships between people in an organization, it shows the relationships between metrics.
Okay.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And we can answer questions as we go, but let's it'll make a little more sense once we. Oh, and Cynthia, can you maybe add the links again just in the Slack, just in case? I know you just added them.
While she's
Um,
doing that, I'll give a quick like
yeah.
why we're talking about goal trees. They are applicable everywhere and anywhere. Doesn't matter what stage of your career you're at. Doesn't matter if you're job hunting, if you are about to have a renewal conversation with an account that spends $2 million with you. It doesn't matter. Goal trees are applicable all the time in the world of customer success. I used to teach goal trees when I was a customer success enablement manager, and I truly believe they are, once they click, they are like a cheat sheet for everything you have to do as a CSM, whether it's renew accounts, drive adoption, drive expansion, develop your own career, write your resume, tell good interview stories. Goal trees will help with all of these things.
And let me just show the visual so that it becomes a little more clear in terms of what we're talking about here in terms of a visual of what a goal tree looks like. And then we'll go back. Yep.
Yeah. So as a CSM, think of a goal tree as kind of like your cheat sheet for speaking your customer's language. So if you are about to go talk to a C-level executive in preparation for a renewal, and you want to say, hey, executive, look how much ROI we've driven. You want to talk about a metric that C-level executive cares about, right? Because if you talk about a metric all the way at the bottom of the goal tree, they're going to be like, I don't care about this thing. Someone way, way, way below me cares about this thing. So it helps you speak to your customer in their language, in a language that they're going to care about. It also helps when you're trying to drive adoption. So we know that just because customers have a tool and know how to use the tool doesn't mean they're actually going to do that. If they did, we wouldn't have jobs. So when you're trying to influence a practitioner or an end user to take an action in a new tool, you also have to speak their language. You have to tell them what's in it for them. You have to relate it back to how's this going to make you look good, or how is this going to make your job easier? So goal tree can also help with that. And then if you're trying to be more strategic with your accounts, which we should all always be trying to do that, you can use a goal tree to understand an organization and look for the quote unquote white space, the metrics that an organization cares about, that you know your product can influence, that you are not currently influencing. So it will show you where there's opportunity for expansion. And then it's also going to help you with things like I said earlier, coming up with numbers for your resume, for my clients on here who don't know this, we use goal trees when we're working on your resumes. You just don't see them. And when you're coming up with results for your interview stories, the questions that we're asking you, like, well, what good things happened? And how did that help other people? And how did that impact the business? We're using a goal tree to pull numbers out of you. I'll let Jan talk about.
Yeah, so another thing, and I just put in the chat my post-sales revenue leadership guide. It's a free guide. I give you the link there because this is another thing that when I'm walking through kind of the perspective of the investors and the CEO, the executive leadership, and how CS leaders need to step up into revenue leadership and business leadership, right? That's another way of speaking to these visuals here, right? When you understand what the actual goals are for your own business, for the company you work at, what is important for that stage of your company, what stage you're in, you're identifying that, as well as then, so like what are the metrics that these different personas are trying to get to and why, right? So it's the same sort of thing you're doing with your customer. You're trying to understand their business objectives, why they're using your product, what they're trying to achieve with it. So in the same way, you could apply this goal tree to your customers, that different personas within your customer, would have, different priorities and goals of what they're trying to do in their day-to-day, what they're trying to achieve. So when you're talking to your customers, based upon if you're talking to a champion or the executive buyer or an end user, they have different goals, right? And you would pop in kind of what their goals are and based upon the goal tree there, right? In the same way, for your own organization, you can think about the investors, the CEO, the CFO, other executive leadership, or other personas within your company. What are their goals? What are they trying to get to? When you understand that, you understand how to step into their shoes and how to connect with them on something that's important and a priority to them, right? And that's why we're doing it, is to help us in terms of how we're communicating and how it resonates with who we're speaking to. So if you're doing this in an interview process, you're also thinking about, who am I speaking to? What's important to them? Am I talking to the hiring manager? Am I talking to a panel that is my peers? Am I talking to a panel that is within other parts of the organization? And if you're a CS leader, you often are talking to a board member towards the end of that progression of interviews, right? So you're thinking about who you're speaking to. So that's why I'm talking about company stage products, what sort of products you have, if the types of metrics you have are based upon the types of products you have. Your business model, I should have added that in, but business model. So like some companies have business models where it's based upon usage, right? Like you think of Snowflake, that's a usage model. Others have, sorry, was there something? A question? No, okay. But then others have licensed seats, seats or licenses, right? So when you're thinking about that, you're thinking about what types of metrics are driving your revenue and what sort of behavior that changes or will resonate like for your customer base, right? And so then you're thinking about your own customer, their company stage, their business goals, and their customer base. Because when you're truly thinking about all the way through, you're thinking about your customers, customers, their customers, what value is it driving all the way down the line? So when you're doing that, then you could have several versions of a goal tree, right? And popping in, what are the key metrics and who are these personas and how do these metrics all relate? That's the beauty of putting it into a visual, which I wasn't familiar with until Carly, but I'm a very visual person, so I love this. Do you want to maybe talk through what what we have here with the email open rate as an example, Carly?
Yeah, we can go through this really quickly. So I just wanted to highlight a real example, if you will, of how you could use a goal tree. Let's just pretend that you work at an email marketing company as a CSM. Jan, can you hit next? I think there's
Yep.
another. Yeah,
Yep.
so just keep going until the whole thing is yellow. Okay.
That's it.
So here we have, let's pretend that you're managing this account and you have 4 stakeholders in the relationship. You've got your end user, who's an account executive or a sales rep. That person has a manager. That person has a manager who's the VP of sales, and then the VP of sales reports to the CRO. Is this perfect? Is this representative of every sales organization? Absolutely not, but you get the idea. So really quick question to just think about is, which metric would you use to motivate an end user of your email marketing tool? So if you're a CSM and you're trying to get someone to log into your email marketing tool and actually use it in their day-to-day job, which metric would you say, oh, we impact this metric, we've been able to improve this thing for other sales teams? It would probably be the email open rate, right? It'd be the person who cares about email open rates. And then if you go to the next one,
Is it there?
I
Sorry.
don't see
No.
it.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so now we can think about this a little bit differently. You're still managing the same account, you've got the same stakeholders. Which metric are you bringing to a business review in preparation for a renewal? Well, you might still talk about email open rates, but a CRO is not losing sleep at night over email open rates, right? A CRO is thinking number of customers, is thinking customer lifetime value, is thinking overall revenue. So if you can work with your stakeholders to figure out, how does email open rate lead to win rate, lead to acquisition, lead to revenue, now I can have such a more powerful conversation with the CRO, who's the one that's signing the renewal. So not only does it tell you what metrics to talk about with what stakeholders, but it's also going to shine a light on where you need to do some more work, right? If you have no idea how email open rate ties to company revenue, then you've got some work to do as a CSM. You've got to draw that line. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to get a renewal.
And for leaders, then, if your data doesn't allow you to calculate these things, then you want to think about what sort of projects you might need to create to clean up the data, or to be able to see that data in whatever CRM, maybe it's Salesforce, maybe it's a CS platform, maybe you're just on Excel or HubSpot, whatever it may be. If you need to clean up that data and make certain that people are regularly entering in some sort of data so that you can calculate any of these things, then that becomes priority 1, right? Whether you're doing it in order for your team to be able to talk to their customers, or if you need to be able to report out kind of what you're achieving, right?
Yeah, and then the last one I threw on here was just thinking about being strategic as a CSM. So if you're trying to find new use cases just to multi-thread the relationship to create more value, or if your company releases some new product or new feature and you're like, great, how am I going to sell this thing to make some more commission? You can use a goal tree to navigate who in the organization is going to care about this thing. So here I put up, your company releases a new product that helps with qualifying leads. Is it the sales manager? Well, we don't know yet, because right now we only have the sales manager attached to win rate, but we do know that that's an important metric. So maybe what we need to do is go ask the sales manager who cares about that thing. So it helps you find opportunities for expansion, whether it's monetary expansion or just use case expansion.
Okay, so we do have some breakout sessions, questions around goal trees, but I just want to double check first because everyone's been unusually quiet. Do we have any questions? And then I'll go back and look at the breakout questions. But any thoughts? Yeah, Trevor?
Yeah, I wrote it in, but basically, when constructing these, is this basically on a new customer acquisition? And with that, do you kind of factor in all of the levels of potential, I guess, people that you need to keep in mind, or do you just stick to the executive sponsor and down? And beyond that, can you combine this sort of mapping with champion building and sort of like a customer-led growth mindset strategy of knowing what's important to each individual person in the chain of sponsors or chain of people you need to impress, and then kind of use that to build stickiness and yeah, champions along the chain?
Yeah, if I don't answer all your questions, let me know. So number one is
Yeah.
kind of like, when do you build this? The answer
Mm-hmm.
is whenever you can, right? I'm not going to pretend like CSMs have so much free time that they're just like, today I'm going to work on my goal trees. That's not realistic. Ideally, you could start filling it out upon that account being assigned to you, because the sales rep should have uncovered some of these things, even if they weren't thinking of it in the context of a goal tree, right? They're
Right.
gonna have
Yeah.
some idea. But truthfully, the most realistic way to think about it is it's something that you're kind of building over time, right? You're not going to sit down with a customer and be like, okay, let's go. We got to fill out the second phase of your goal tree. It's just going to be something that you kind of reference before a meeting to think about, oh, what's like one or two questions I can ask today to get one more detail on the goal tree.
Mm.
Hopefully that answers when.
Yeah.
How much is this contained by the executive sponsor down? I think it depends on first of all, it depends on the product or service you're selling. Because if you're just selling a tool that helps sales teams, you don't necessarily need to delve into the other arms of the goal tree, right? Because it's just not going to be relevant for your conversations. And then in terms of how high you go in the organization, depends on the size, right? So like Liberty Mutual used to be my customer. I never met a C-level executive there, and I probably never would have. So
Right.
it just kind of depends. Hopefully that answers the like
I would
height.
say though that it's helpful to understand the context. If you can project what they are reporting up to and what is important, even if you're not going to have a conversation with them, that still drives your customer in terms of what is important to them and what they need to report to, right?
Mm.
So it's, even if you're not, even if it doesn't actually result in a conversation, still try to know it if you can. Allison,
Okay.
you're on mute. Yep.
Two questions, one for Carly and then one for you, Jan.
Yep.
So, Carly, am I correct to think that my one thought in learning about these, which I think are brilliant, is the tracking component. So, am I correct to think that this might be something that would marry kind of easily into a customer success plan if I was able to identify that and to then track it that way? Okay, perfect.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And then secondly, Jan, when you were talking about CS leaders and CS leaders trying to, I guess, attach this exercise to revenue or numbers, what would that look like for them if we are having different goal trees and different stakeholders that we're working with? How would that work for one, if you would, metric? Does that question make sense?
So when you say for one metric,
Meaning, like, let's say that I'm working with a sales manager and a VP of sales where my colleague is working with another account and they have a completely different hierarchy. Like, how do you do that for like one metric for,
If-
the sales team?
if that does happen, chances are those companies are using either your products in a different way, or it is a different set of products that they're using. Probably your customers, or they're outliers and maybe bad fit customers. But generally speaking, your customers do fit within buckets. There might be specific differences in terms of Carly's approach being one-on-one. There could be specific differences, but I would say generally speaking, what I've seen is that when you're looking at segments of customers, that they generally have personas, they generally have typical types of metrics that they're working towards. And so if there is something specific that they're working on using your product, you go ahead and note that and put that in your goal tree or your success plan. But I would say too that, in a world where we're doing sort of one to many, even if we're working as high touch CSMs, as much as you can approximate, I think you're going to be stronger in terms of being able to get it all done too. So does that answer your question? Allison, you're on mute, so I'm hoping that it does. Okay. And Jay?
Yeah, Carly, very, very quickly. So as we get better at building goal trees, my sense is both a bit of an art and a science. Where do you often see goal tree building go wrong? Because sometimes I think it's easier to wrap our heads around what not to do as we figure out how to optimize our process going forward. So
You see me literally crawling out of my chair. I'm like, I love this question. Firstly, I would say it's in the positioning of it. If you are going to bring it up with a customer, make sure you've practiced it and that it feels very natural and organic. You never want to be like, hey, customer, here's your goal tree. Help me fill it out. Because they're going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? But like anything, if you position it the right way, hey, customer, so I don't know if you've ever heard of a goal tree. It's this thing. I use it with all of my accounts because it helps us stay attached to the value, the metrics that you care about. Would you mind? I just have like 3 questions for you that would help me kind of visualize how what we're doing together impacts metrics that you care about. Would that be okay if we have a conversation? And then they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is going to benefit me. Yeah, I don't care what it is, a gold tree, a maple tree, like, yeah, let's do it. So I'd say that's where it could go wrong. The other place it could go wrong is if you get really, really obsessed with getting the metrics perfectly right, which I'm a perfectionist, so like I get that. But there's no one right, best, only way to build a goal tree for any organization. There's always going to be multiple ways that metrics can relate to one another. You can sometimes leave certain metrics out. So I would say like getting too obsessed with it being perfect will just keep you from making any progress on a goal tree.
beautiful.
I
Thanks,
would just
Carly.
add, kind of taking it back to the question before, that as a CS leader, if you can sort of already have sort of an approximate, like the personas and the goals and how that would work into the hierarchy with, the visual hierarchy. And then you can even, as a CSM, go to your customer and say, so in our experience, these are the types of goals that we've seen. Does this match with what you have in your organization? And sometimes just by giving them something to react off of and say, no, that's not it at all. Or yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what we care about too. You get me. Like that, that can be a nice experience for them as well. All right. Let me go back to then the, where is it? The screen. So we can just look at, and if you don't have these slides and resources and the breakout questions downloaded, do that now. But just looking at this, where can you do a better job of translating metrics to appeal to the audience you're interacting with? So first identify who is your audience for that. And in what areas of your day-to-day work or job search do you talk about metrics? Who do you talk to them about, and how would a goal tree help? So that's also going to be at the top of the breakout questions. So you'll have that there. Just a reminder, let's go through the intros, just real quick lightning round. So that way you do have time to dig into the topic. Be sure to share your LinkedIn. We have Slack community to connect 24/7. So there's lots of ways to connect. We all love your personal story, but let's do that one-on-one with folks and instead dig in on on gold trees, if that's cool. Hi, everybody. How'd it go?
This is a good topic. I think we'll need to dwell a little bit more into it. As we were discussing, we're like, makes so much sense.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. Were there any aha moments for anybody? Anything that's like that you heard from someone, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Right, Galvez.
Hey, yeah. So in our group, we started by talking about how so far either the tracking of these metrics were not available or we were not aware, but we realized how important it is. And then I asked that, how can I understand different roles in an organization and what is their objective? And that comes partly to experience and partly to business acumen. Joshua mentioned about a course from GGR that it's about business acumen. Like some people like me might benefit from it. So I just wanted to highlight that and also ask others, how are you familiar with all these different metrics for different, let's say CRO versus, sales manager versus, another person, like, because I don't know how they do their job day to day internally. I've never done that. So how can I know their metrics? And then also Joshua mentioned another thing that at the beginning of the customer journey, you can do objective discovery. So that's the best time because everybody's excited and they would like to share with you. So that's a good time to review what you learned from your salespeople.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. And that just to that point, yeah, there is a video course out there. I'm also building a course because this is so critical that we step up as business leaders. And that's also why I wrote that free guide. And so you'll see a lot of those types of metrics. And if you have any questions like, yeah, but this doesn't, fill me in on this metric, that metric, whatever, that's what I'm writing about and trying to do. This is my passion right here is about those business metrics and helping us all step up as business leaders. So if you ever have questions on this, let me know. This is what I want to make certain that we all can bring each of us in our organizations and in our careers. So thank you so much, boys. That's great. And Joshua, thank you so much for mentioning those other resources. That's great. Have you, Joshua, I know you've got you've got my guide. Have you been able to check out the other resources as well, or?
Not yet. It is on my docket for the next couple of weeks after my company all hands meeting.
Yeah. But I just meant like some of the courses that you've seen out there and things like that, if any of those, or no?
Nothing that comes definitively to mind right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I will follow up as I see more things. I'm looking at this type of content all the time. And if you have questions, DM me and I will post it in the community for sure. And if there's ever any other resources that people are looking at, please feel free to share. What other sort of aha moments? I'm glad to hear about the data being something because that's something that happens across organizations for sure. Sean, you're off mute. Does that mean you've got a contribution?
Always. I was just about to drop a couple of suggestions in the chat.
Yeah.
Only CFO and SaaS CFO are great folks to follow. They post quite frequently and talk about a lot of the fundamentals of not just B2B SaaS, but business in general. And I think a lot of the metrics that they talk about are things that, frankly, we don't talk about enough from a customer success perspective. So just, something to add to the reading list is what I would suggest there.
Yeah. And I quote from them frequently in my guide too, because I have a lot of links in there. But I'll just put those two things in the chat. Pam.
So we talked about using AI for one, you can, whoever you're going to interview with, look at their profile and put it through and say, hey, what are they talking about? What do they say is important? And also, just like everybody's using notes for transcription, using those to see, how is my speech actually doing with my metrics? Am I talking about it enough? And what is the person saying? So, for triage,
Good.
are we discussing the metrics?
Yep. And that reminds me, we have a session coming up. I think it's next week, actually, where we're talking about customer education and customer marketing. And Christine Kukic, who's a member of the community, will be co-leading on that. And she talks about AI frequently, and we'll also be talking about AI in that session as well. And there will be probably some other resources we'll be bringing up around AI, but that's a really good point. Any other, I know we're at time, any other things we should share before we head out for the day? I did post yesterday, we have 2 other 9 a.m. sessions for May 7th and May 21st are going to be at 9 a.m. I'm working on addressing the Zoom challenges so that you can actually get these in your inbox and on your calendar. Carly, thank you so much for rejoining us today and really helping us dig in on these goal trees. It's just
you all
fantastic.
for nerding out on goal trees with me. I love this. Like, you're my people.
I did have one question related to
Yeah.
it. I think somebody asked in the chat, Carly, how, that just looked like maybe a PowerPoint format, but I don't know if you answered it in the chat. Where are you using, what platform are you using for goal trees?
Yeah, love this. So I believe it's Excel and Google Sheets both have relational mapping. It's a little wonky, but once you figure it out, it's actually quite easy, where if you input your values in 2 columns, it will spit out a relational map for you. I believe they call it an org map. So I would look for that. If you want something free, Google Sheets, Excel. Because I'm super visual, I freaking love Miro.
Yeah.
You have great maps that you can use. But you can really do it anywhere. Like, you can do it in PowerPoint. I think Excel and spreadsheets will get the job done just fine.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and Trevor put in the chat Canva. Pretty much, if you can, anything that you type in like org chart, that's basically, what it is. It's handy if you can move things around so you can have more, in one area and fewer in another, just like with org charts, often you can. So.
Thanks.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Just really appreciate you sticking around a couple minutes extra on a weekday, early time like this. And it was just fantastic to have you all here. See you next week at the regular time. All of our information about our sessions is on the website, so you can always see the schedule there. All right. Awesome. See you in the community.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.